So as Scott mentioned, I am with Microsoft, but I do want to let you know that in a previous life, Java instructor, been doing Objective-C iPhone development, and I obviously am interested in a lot of different programming platforms. So I don't want you to think right away this is a drink the Kool-Aid Microsoft presentation. And in fact, as Scott accurately depicted, jQuery is a very popular technology that all camps are really enjoying. And so I guess just to get a little bit of an expectation, how many of you are already doing jQuery stuff right now? So, you know, maybe 50, 60% of you. So, you know, it's kind of interesting when you're going to do a presentation like this and you have a limited amount of time, you know, to what depth or what angle can you go. So what I did was a very vertical slant. What I want to do is just walk through one of the capabilities of jQuery. And I was at a conference in Vegas, and I happened to have a 75-minute session, which most of that session was on dynamic styling through jQuery and CSS. Now, granted, some of that was Microsoft stuff. But ironically, the crowd pleaser, if you will, or the one demo I did where I was like, oh man, everyone liked that one, had nothing to do with Microsoft technology. It was pure jQuery, CSS, and HTML.
That was ironic.
It's ironic, yes, the whoosh, you know, throwing of the tomato. But it was a very good crowd pleaser. So what I did is I extracted out that piece and made it all HTML, you know, and Scott's right, I'm probably going to use more than anything, just a text editor to show you the content of the source of the HTML. But nonetheless, the walkthrough is how to do some dynamic styling. Not only modifying the CSS, but also doing a very cool client-side toggle of an entire CSS doc. So if you had limited experience with jQuery, one of the benefits of this is that you won't need to have a lot. It probably would benefit you if you had some JavaScript background. But if you don't have any jQuery, you'll be able to see how we get started. And if you're already doing jQuery left and right, maybe this would be one thing that you haven't seen how to do yet. So with that said, let me pull up here, and for your sake, I switched to Chrome. So, you know, you can see that I'm good with different browsers. This is the original HTML, and obviously it's ugly. It's just the pure stuff. If I go back over to the editor over here, I'll just cruise here. You can see it's just plain HTML content, and you know, nothing fancy here. There's no server-side stuff going on. It's just plain HTML content. Well, right here, let's see, right about here is where I'm obviously going to start looking at how I want to get involved with the, let me see what did I miss my closing head tag? I think so. Hold on just a second, let me do it this way. There we go. So I want to place inside of this header some information that's going to allow me to link up this style sheet, which is right here. So yeah, it's on dynamic CSS manipulation through jQuery, but it's not a talk on what is CSS, right? So hopefully that doesn't look too foreign to you, other than the fact that all these things are here are likely either HTML elements or classes or IDs that are found inside of the HTML. So it's just giving some styling definition. I want to sync this into that HTML document. So because I knew I had a limited amount of time today, I didn't want to type. So what I did is I just put this HTML in stages. So the step one is let's go ahead and add that link to the very top. And then I'm also going to add in a script to the latest version of jQuery, which is 1.4.4. And so I'm using a CDN. So of course, there's some caching benefits for browsers if you do this. And then I've added a default script right here that uses jQuery. Basically, the $sign is an alias for jQuery, the object. And you know, it's kind of funny. If you've never used jQuery before, I can tell you right now, it's amazing how much fuss there is over a text file. because it's all it is. It's one text file. And it's amazing how much that text file has changed. You know, it's not an executable. It's just a text file filled with a whole bunch of JavaScript. So that's what we're including. We're accessing the major jQuery object here, and I'm using an abbreviated shortcut that says, and when this Windows document loads, or the DOM loads, what do you want to do? So right here, I've created a variable that's going to represent, basically, if you were like a SQL person or doing a database access, the analogy here is select star from HTML document where class equals sidebar, and underneath there, I'm looking for any H2 elements. So if I were to scroll down in here and look for, there's, let's see, was it sidebar? Yeah, class equals sidebar, so let's see if there's one. So there's a sidebar, so it's saying, you know, I want to get to the H2 elements underneath this div. So that's my little select statement here to get all that content. So it's going to choose it all. Now, if I were to run this, so going back over here and go to step 1, I have now effectively taken that ugly HTML, applied all the styles to it, and I have that variable that says, yeah, I want to own all of that, I want to keep that in memory, but I'm doing nothing with it yet. So I just have a container that says, yeah, give me access to those. Now, if you notice, as I hover over each of these headings here, my cursor changes from, you know, an arrow to almost looks like I can start, you know, typing in here or texting. And what I want to do is I want to change these so that they're actually going to be collapsible options. So my first thought here, going over, is to change, to append this so that I'm going to improve the user experience and add a pointer. So I'm going to say, hey, all you titled content thingies that are on my on my page, if anyone ever hovers over you, this is the function that is going to get called. Change your current CSS cursor definition to be a pointer. Almost reads like English, almost. You know, so, but basically that's what we're saying to do here. So if I go back over to step number 2, then as I start to hover over this now, I can see that I get the little hand, and that's indicating, hey, click me. You know, click. So I do, and nothing happens. Because there's no behavior for that yet. We don't think of H2 elements as clickable, but we're changing the rules. We're saying you will be clickable. So going back over here, we have the, you know, we're setting the stage. Okay, well, we've got something improved with the user experience. And now we're saying, hey, you again. We're going to add a toggle feature. And basically the toggle is multiple things at once. It means when you click this, the first time you click it, do this function. The next time you click it, do this function. And it just knows to alternate between those two functions and thus toggle those behaviors. Well, this particular function says, take everything here and everything that follows that H2 tag, slide toggle, which means we're going to collapse. And then here, slide up means we're going to bring everything back again. Please.
Is next all from that point going forward, or is that everything else?
Excellent question. Joe asked, is next all, you know, everything else, or is it basically what it is it's all the siblings that are part, you know, wherever you are in that DOM hierarchy. But it's not going to do everything else on the page. Just everything that would be considered a sibling of that particular element on the page that follows it. So let's see what happens now when I cruise over here and click on step. I think that was 3. Thank you. So now, if I cruise over to security and click it, I get that nice little, you know, collapse because it's a toggle. I click on it again. Hello. Thank you. And, you know, that works all the way around. And it works for everything where I've applied that has one of those class definitions in there. So that's good. And now I'm thinking, well, you know, the way our users work, they want minimal real estate. They want everything to be collapsed by default. So cruising back over here again, as you can see, obviously this isn't going to be triggered until one of those items is clicked. So going over to the next step, I now say, by the way, let's go ahead and toggle everything. And the little Boolean option there, well, actually, I forgot exactly what it did, but it's going to make sure that everything is collapsed by default. So I'll just demonstrate it. Right here, step number 4. So you can see everything is now collapsed by default. And of course, if I wanted to look at any one of these, I can see that they're already available. And you know, I can continue to use this little collapsible thing. So you know, I'm thinking back in the day, so to speak, that you would think something like that would be a third-party control, or you would have to go, you know, dig up some long, expensive JavaScript. But all I'm doing so far is just modifying an H2 element and saying everything that basically follows it is going to get collapsed. So adds for a nice user experience. Now, finally, there is this toggle button that I haven't clicked yet. And you know, when people are doing jQuery, one of the benefits of jQuery is, of course, you can get a lot of control over the HTML elements. I mean, I haven't demonstrated it, but I'm sure you can figure out, even by just looking at some of the content, if you've been involved with it. When we say this.css, and we then say, you know, this is the thing and this is the value, you know, that's any CSS value that you're currently happy with, you know, background color, whatever it is that you want to use. So you can modify anything about any of the elements. Well, one of the features that Microsoft made available in its Visual Studio environment for developers was the ability to create their websites or web applications to have multiple themes. And what it would do for the Microsoft developer who wanted to swap the theme of the site, it was all server-side technology. But one of the cool things that jQuery does is it enables you to have that theme swapping capability where you're not changing the content of your HTML at all, but you want to drastically change the entire UI. So in this example, there's this default to CSS, and if I compared it to this one, you know, just by toggling back and forth, you could start to see values are changing. So it's still modifying the same elements, it's just changing the style definitions. Well, in this final example, when I scroll down below, now I want to toggle the source of the style sheet right now, which means I don't want to do a round trip to a server and say, let's regenerate a new link to a new CSS. Let's do it right here in the browser. So when we click on our button, which the ID of the button is B1, says, hey, first time you click this, go to default to CSS, which is that new one. Otherwise, the next time you get clicked, go back to the original one. So again, the toggle occurs. So look how awesome this is. When we cruise over here, go to the final, and so I have my toggle button. Let's see how fast we can get a theme swapping capability to occur. Bam! Same exact HTML. In fact, if I were to expand something, I just expanded demos over here. Shazam! 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 So, I mean, it's keeping the same content memory, just dynamically swapping out that CSS. And look how easy that was in terms of lines of code. I mean, basically, this is all we had to do that. One of the cool features of toggling, if you did it this way, is that you can continue to add more and more functions. It's not limited to 2, you know. So if you want to add many toggles, or you notice that I had a B1 button. Well, I could have added multiple buttons as well, right? and just had each one of them pull up its own theme so that you can specifically choose which theme instead of just, alternating them through.
So toggle function is a round robin of however many functions you put in.
That is correct. Yep. And it just automatically starts with one and maintains in memory which position you were in. You don't have to worry about maintaining any pointers to anything. It just knows what to do.
What happens if you refresh the page? Does it go back to the beginning?
Good question. She just said, what happens when the user decides that this is a fun button? So when we click the refresh here, you could see that did actually cause that round trip to refresh the content. So it's going to come back to whatever the state was when you originally downloaded it. So if you manually refresh it, that's what it's going to do.
Is there a way to capture that on something like a page leave event and warn the user? It's like if that's CMS and somebody's typed out a paragraph, I've seen sites that do that. They're like, warning, you're about to leave, are you sure? And you click escape and then you don't leave.
Sure.
Is that a jQuery function? I mean, obviously it's JavaScript, but...
You mean, can you get somebody to... Is there some way to capture whether they're trying to refresh the page?
Right.
I don't know, but...
Yeah, there's a...
Unload callback.
Yeah.
Unload callback? Unload callback.
Right.
So if someone tries to refresh the page, it's going to call that first?
Yeah, you use prompt unload.
That's cool. And you know what? I bet you anything, if that were a need of mine, like if I knew that was, I bet you jQuery has something that makes it easier as well.
Yeah.
You just write a cookie.
I mean, there's probably a lot of different ways you can manage that. Right. But in any event, obviously, the only thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of approach is that the CSS that you're introducing into the mix just has to be aware of what the HTML content is. So you have one HTML content, multiple CSS documents, and it's a way for you to dynamically swap things out. So some might ask, why would this be important? Think about portal sites or situations where you want to have multiple facing type of sites. Granted, I'm doing this dynamically on the client side, but you could also serve it up so that, based on if they wanted to switch to different themes, sports, or there's different types of technology scenes or whatever it is. Maybe your clients want to have different views based on, something that of interest to them, or if you're doing, some kind of social type site, this would be a great way to get that dynamic energy going and see, and they'll look at that and say, wow, that is fast, right? Because they're probably used to every time they click something to change a theme, it's going to take seconds. They're going to see something spinning or whatever, and this is just immediate.
It doesn't have to be drastic either. I mean, font size or...
What's that?
Font size changes or...
You're absolutely right. Although, Scott brings up a good point. Let me bring this back over here. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to demonstrate a little bit of each way you could do some styling in CSS. If I was interested in doing what you just said, and maybe all I'm really going to do is just maybe manage some font sizes or something, I might just use this approach, right? And just find what's relevant on the page, grab that. That's why I like to do the little variables up here that say from this point forward, I know what this is. And these can be very complex queries, so they can hold a lot. Yes?
So you're changing on the titled content, so any H2s in the sidebar, you're changing cursor to pointer. You're making it a pointer. When you reload the next CSS document, does that get destroyed, or does it run through the CSS rules again in the order? Or it's maintained?
Yeah. It is maintained, yes.
What happens if I have that style defined in the new style sheet? Would it lose what you set? So if I have cursor defined in default to CSS, and I've set it on page load, is it going to override that JavaScript there with the new CSS file?
Okay, I think I understand the question. I'll rephrase it and you tell me if I got this right. So what he's saying is that what if the CSS, the new one that's coming in, already had a definition for actually these elements, and it already had its own definition for what the pointer should be? Right. And since we've already ran this and now we're toggling it, and this was in memory before, and now we're introducing the new CSS, I haven't tried that, but I can tell you probably 99% of my belief system as to what would happen would be that the the default style, the new style sheet would win.
Would override.
Yeah,
So I
cascade
think that's
style
probably,
sheets.
I think that's normally true. The new style sheet would win, but in this example, because it's on hover, that's a function that's running, and that will win. Because even though you've defined something in your
You're
CSS,
right. Yes.
that's a function that's
Actually,
going
that's
to.
a good point because
Yeah.
this isn't part
If
of
you're
the
running
CSS.
it as that's a function of the hover event.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
if it
getting
were-
called
So if
every
we had
time.
run
You're
just this.css on page load,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott's right.
Yeah.
We're not assigning this like a page level style. This is actually a function getting called. So you're right. The
But if it
hover
were
will-
just static style,
That's correct.
then number 2 would win.
Yeah, very good. Cool. Any other questions on that? I wasn't a very long demo, and I'm gonna zip up all the HTML. It's not very much. In fact, if you have thumb drives or something, or I can give it to Scott and he can disperse it around here, or Joe. But I'm gonna just do a quick blog sometime in the next couple hours and just make sure it's all available if you want to play around with some of the jQuery stuff.
If you do a blog and include the source, then we'll just put it on. We'll just make that available.
Sounds good.
That's-
Sounds good. Any questions? Cool. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.